My mother-in-law locked me out in the freezing cold wearing nothing but a bathrobe. An hour later, she called me in tears, begging me to come back. -8 degrees Fahrenheit. I knew the exact number because just 10 minutes ago I had looked at the smart thermostat display in the warm, cozy entryway of our suburban home. And now I was standing on the porch, barefoot, save for a pair of thin house slippers, wearing nothing but a pink fleece bathrobe thrown over light pajamas. Right in front of my nose stood the massive steel front door, which had cut me off from warmth, safety, and my entire life with a dull, uncompromising click. Behind that door was my mother-in-law, Judy. My husband, Max, left for a 3-day business trip. We moved into this house just 6 months ago, pouring all of our savings into it and taking out a massive mortgage. It was our little nest, but Judy always saw it differently. To her, it was her son's house, where I had been allowed to live due to some unfortunate misunderstanding. She arrived unannounced on Friday morning. She claimed that since Max was away, I must be lonely and terrified all by myself out in the woods. From her very first minutes there, the usual psychological warfare began. Dust on the baseboards, improperly brewed tea, wasting too much money on heating. Living in a gated community was pure vanity, and I was a worthless housewife. I endured it. I always endured it for Max's sake. But that evening, as a January blizzard howled outside the window, the tension broke. We picked a fight over a complete triviality. I had moved her favorite mug to a different shelf. One thing led to another, and Judy started screaming. "You are a nobody here," she shrieked, spitting words. "You're completely broke and freeloading. If it weren't for my son, you'd still be living in that roach-infested trailer park. This house belongs to Max. We bought it while married, and half of the mortgage is in my name," I replied calmly, though everything inside me was trembling. "Please stop shouting. You are a guest in my home." "A guest? I'll throw you out of here right now." At that exact moment, the lights flickered. The circuit breakers in the outdoor panel on the porch tripped again. It happened whenever the water heater, the oven, and the space heater in the guest bedroom were running at the same time. "I'll go flip the breaker," I sighed, deciding to use the moment to cool down. I threw on my bathrobe, shoved my phone into my pocket, out of habit since I was listening to a podcast through an earbud, and stepped out onto the porch. I opened the breaker box and flipped the switch. The lights inside the windows turned back on, and then I heard the heavy front door slam shut behind me, followed by the distinct, double-turning sound of the deadbolt. I turned around, unable to believe my ears. I rattled the handle. Locked. I walked over to the living room window and peered inside. Judy was standing on the other side of the double-pane glass, arms crossed over her chest, smiling triumphantly. "Judy, open up!" I yelled. "This isn't funny. It's freezing out here." She just mouthed something contemptuously. Through the thick glass I could only make out the words "cool off," and aggressively drew the heavy curtains shut. For the first few minutes I stood on the porch, convinced it was just a sick joke, that she would open the door any second, lecture me again, and let me back into the warmth. But time ticked away. The icy wind cut right through my bathrobe, stinging my skin like hundreds of tiny needles. The freezing air burned my lungs with every breath. My toes were rapidly going numb. The thin soles of my slippers offered absolutely no protection against the frozen concrete of the porch. It's in moments like these that your brain functions with frightening clarity. I realized she wasn't going to let me back in. She was truly willing to let me freeze to death just to power trip. I pulled out my phone. Battery life 42%. iPhones die instantly in extreme cold, so I shoved it deep back into my bathrobe pocket, pressing it against my stomach to keep it warm with my own body heat. Calling Max was pointless. He was in a different time zone at an important conference, and even if he picked up, he couldn't help me from there. The local police would take at least an hour to reach our subdivision, and in an hour like this, I'd turn into an ice statue. The snow burned my bare ankles worse than scalding water. My slippers flew off instantly, sinking deep into the fresh powder, and I ran the rest of the way barefoot. I didn't feel the pain, only a wild, primal terror and adrenaline pushing me forward. Reaching the neighbor's porch, I began pounding on the door with my fists. "Mark, Mary, please help me." After an eternity, in reality about 40 seconds, the porch light flickered on. The door swung open. Mark stood there in a thick sweater, squinting against the bright light. "Chloe? Dear God, what are you doing out in the freezing cold like this?" He gasped. He practically dragged me into the entryway. Hearing the commotion, Mary rushed out. They immediately wrapped me in a down comforter, sat me down next to the radiator, and Mary began vigorously rubbing my frozen feet with a coarse towel, gasping and shifting in shock. "What happened, sweetheart? A fire? A break-in?" Mark pressed, pouring me a mug of scalding hot tea with honey. I was shaking so violently that I spilled half of the tea trying to lift the mug to my lips. My teeth were chattering like jackhammers. My mother-in-law," I managed to choke out. She kicked me out, locked the door. "How could anyone do such a thing?" Mary cried, throwing her hands up. "In this weather? That's a crime, Chloe. That's criminal endangerment." I sat there, bundled in someone else's blanket, drinking sweet tea, and as the warmth returned to my body, a cold, heavy rage began to burn inside me. My politeness, my habit of smoothing things over and trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law had died out there in that snowdrift. Exactly an hour passed. I had fully warmed up. They lent me wool socks and an old but warm fleece tracksuit. Mark was already grabbing a crowbar, intending to head over to our house to properly explain some basic manners to that old hag, when the phone in my bathrobe pocket, which was draped over a chair, rang. I pulled it out. The screen lit up. Judy, mother-in-law. The neighbors and I exchanged glances. "Put it on speaker," Mark advised quietly, crossing his arms. I swiped the green button. "Yes?" My voice sounded dry and detached. I expected to hear a haughty demand for an apology or a smug question asking if I had cooled down. Instead, a frantic, animalistic wail pierced the speaker. "Chloe! Chloe, my dear, I beg you!" My mother-in-law's voice cracked into a hysterical rasp. She was choking on tears in sheer panic. "Save me, for God's sake. Chloe, come back, please." I frowned. "What happened, Judy? Did you change your mind about kicking me out?" "Chloe, I'm dying." She howled into the phone. I fell. My leg. Something snapped. I can't get up. And the gas. "Chloe, the gas." Mary gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. I sat up straight, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Calm down and explain clearly. Where are you? What gas?" "I'm in the kitchen," my mother-in-law sobbed. "After I locked the door behind you, I turned the top deadbolt, but it jammed and the key snapped inside. I went to the kitchen to put the kettle on the gas stove, and I tripped over that damn cat. I felt it feels like my leg broke right in half. The pain is agonizing. I'm seeing stars. I can't get up. I'm trying to crawl, but the kettle boiled over, doused the burner. The flame went out, but the gas is still running. I can smell it. Chloe, I can't crawl to the window. I'm going to suffocate. Please call 911. Break the door down." The pieces clicked together. Our house used a propane-powered range hooked up to an external tank. It was an older model without an automatic gas shut-off safety valve. If the flame was snuffed out, the gas would keep pumping into the room, and Judy, after locking me out, had snapped the fragile key inside the old deadbolt lock, the very one we were planning to replace next week. She was trapped in a gas chamber entirely by her own doing. "I'm on my way," I said shortly and hung up. "Mark, grab the crowbar," Mary commanded. "The woman is going to suffocate in there, viper or not." The three of us sprinted back. The wind had died down, but the cold felt even more vicious. As we neared the house, I could actually smell the faint, distinct scent of sulfur gas escaping through the exterior ventilation grate. Mark rushed to the front door, wedged the crowbar into the gap, and tried to leverage it open. "No use. This is a heavy-duty steel security door," he panted. "We'll have to break a window." "Break the kitchen one," I yelled. "It's the fastest way to get to the stove." We sprinted around the house. Through the open blinds in the kitchen, we could see Judy lying on the floor. She was clutching her twisted ankle, coughing violently. On the stove, the waterlogged burner was hissing loudly. Mark swung and slammed the heavy handle of the crowbar against the double-pane window. It spider-webbed with cracks, but held. "Step back," he commanded, and struck it again with all his might. The glass shattered inward with a loud crash. A sharp, nauseating stench of gas hit us right in the face. I didn't waste a second. Pulling the collar of Mark's track jacket over my nose, I pulled myself up onto the windowsill and dove straight inside, right through the shards of glass. First things first, I rushed to the stove and forcefully turned all the knobs to the off position. Then I threw the window wide open, ran into the living room, and flung open the patio doors to create a cross breeze. The freezing air rushed into the house, flushing out the deadly gas. Only then did I approach my mother-in-law. She lay on the floor, among the shards of glass, pale as a sheet. Her arrogance, her haughtiness, her commanding tone, all of it was gone. Before me lay a frightened, pathetic elderly woman. Chloe, she whispered through parched lips. Forgive me, I just wanted to scare you. You didn't scare me, Judy, I replied in a flat, ice-cold tone, looking down at her. You almost killed me, and then you almost killed yourself. Mark grunted as he climbed through the window behind me. I called 911, he said, examining Judy's swollen leg. That's a nasty compound fracture right there. She's going to be off her feet for a long time. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. The paramedics applied a splint, shot Judy up with heavy painkillers, and loaded her onto a stretcher. The entire time she didn't take her frightened, guilty eyes off me. When the EMT asked if I would be riding along as her emergency contact, I shook my head. No. I need to clean up the house. I'll meet her at the hospital. I taped up the broken window with some plastic sheeting Mark found, turned the thermostat all the way up to warm up the draft-chilled house, and poured myself a glass of Chardonnay. My hands weren't shaking anymore. For the first time in years of marriage, I felt absolute clarity and peace. The next morning Max returned. He had cut his business trip short the moment I reached him and explained everything. He walked into the house exhausted, pale, with a deeply guilty look in his eyes. We sat in the kitchen. I looked at him and watched him painfully scramble for words. Chloe, the doctor said Mom has a severe fracture. She's going to need round-the-clock care. 2 months at least. She's begging us to take her in after she's discharged. She says she only trusts you. I slowly set my coffee mug down on the table. No, I said. One short word that carried the full weight of the night I had just survived. But Chloe, she's an old woman. She realizes her mistake. She was crying and begging for your forgiveness. Max, I looked him dead in the eye. My voice was calm, but it had a steely edge to it. Your mother locked me out in below-zero weather in nothing but a bathrobe. If it wasn't for the neighbors, I would have lost my toes, or frozen to death. The fact that she then mutilated herself and almost blew up our house is karma, not a reason for my pity. I paused, letting the words sink into his head. She will never cross the threshold of this house again, ever, with a cast or without it. Hire a nurse, send her to a private rehab center, move into her apartment to take care of her yourself. That is your right as her son, but she will not be in my home. Max tried to say something, but looking at my face he stopped short. He realized this wasn't an ultimatum, it was a statement of fact, a boundary that could no longer be crossed. Okay, he said quietly, lowering his head. I'll hire a caregiver, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't here. 2 years have passed, our house has changed. We installed a new, reinforced window in the kitchen. We swapped the old locks for a modern smart lock system with biometric fingerprint access. We got a dog, a golden retriever, who now keeps my feet warm on cold winter evenings. Judy's recovery was long. She walks with a cane now. Max visits her on weekends, brings her groceries, and pays her medical bills. I don't interfere with their relationship. That would be cruel. But she has never set foot in our neighborhood again. Not once. Sometimes when Max talks to her on speakerphone, I catch the sound of her voice. The venom is gone, along with the authoritative edge. There is only the quiet frailty of old age. If she hears my voice in the background, she quickly asks Max to pass along her regards and hurries to end the call.
She learned her cold lesson, and so did I. The warmth of someone else's hearth won't keep you warm if there is ice in their heart. And to protect your own home, sometimes you mustn't be afraid to step out into the cold.